of the big banger events of 2019 is finally here. We come down to the Windy City, Port Elizabeth, for ICE, the Inner City Enduro for 2019. Last year gave us a brand new winner in the shape of Blake Goodsight. He held something in the can for the very last lap and pulled the pin to walk away as the new champion. But the man is back. He has got to go up against Wade Young. We've only ever had 2 winners on the ICE event. Wade's got the most wins. We've got a new winner in Blake Goodsight, but you have never seen a stacked gate like this. We walk down to the pits to check out how everyone feels about the track and the new feature of the Widowmaker. Join me as we look at one of the gnarliest climbs I have ever seen in extreme racing on South African soil.
Yeah, the track is it's quite tight, especially at the beginning and the end. I feel like it's a lot more of a challenging track, especially towards the end, which makes it cool because then if there's a whole lot of riders coming into the last section together, there's always room for error, and there can be 5 positions changed in the last 10 meters. So I think that's really cool. It makes it exciting and it makes you have to focus a lot more.
Yeah, you know, it was unfortunately last minute. I pulled out of last year, so it was a bit of a shame. It's always a good event. Mike puts on a great show. So yeah, I'm back this year. Happy to be back. The rules just seem to get harder. I think it will make for great spectators, but a little bit more difficult to continuously win this year. As it's a lucky draw every time we finish. So it's not just start position. So every race is a new race and looking forward to it.
2019 also marked the 4th time that we had been back at Barkens Valley. The PE locals knew exactly what they were in for and were queuing around the block before entry opened. They got themselves ready, locked and loaded to get into their position to watch the best riding and racing in the country.
This year has been a very comfortable year, especially in practice and qualifying. I got the 2nd place I was looking for, and today I'm just going to go out, have some fun and just ride like I normally ride.
Nice conditions today as well, nice and cool. You guys won't be sweating too bad.
Yeah, definitely a lot better than yesterday. Yesterday was hot, it was bothering, it was irritating. But today it's nice, it's chilly a little bit, but it's going to be nice.
No, that was very good. I was started at the back and I pushed to the front. Just made a little mistake there. That's unfortunate. And then came in first. Good run.
With 9 junior riders going through the knockout rounds, it left us with the top 3 into the final. Luca Van Sale, Tristan Hedgecock, and the standout favourite, Titus Iverson. You're on the 125. A lot of guys say the 125 maybe spins a little much for this, but I know you've got a good enduro setup on it.
Yeah, I think we've got a good combination of power to weight ratio, so now we're going to go for gold.
A stacked 19 rider lineup for the support class gave us some bar-banging racing action. It was clear that a lot of guys were going to get trimmed out as we went through all of the qualifying loops. Big Darren Gray was always inside of the top 5. Hedgecock was running numbers the whole way through. One of the big surprises, though, was a miserable start to the day for the reigning support class champion, Dale Stock. One by one they fell, one by one the guys made it through. There were around about 5 or 6 riders that were constantly inside of the top 5, making it through each of the gates. Hedgecock, as the day went on, got faster and faster, and he took the most heat wins out of everyone else. Dale Stock was starting at the back of the pack, but somehow miracled his way forward to qualify.
Yeah, I haven't had good gate draws, 3rd row, 2nd row, but it's fun. This is what it's all about. I'm not in the pro class for once, so I can have some fun and just enjoy it for a little moment and have a good dance with some of these young guns like our Sully boy. It's good.
Tightening up into the top 8 then, Hedgecock, Stock, Gray, Swanepoel and Raiden were the standouts. Definitely going to be maybe 3 or 4 guys banging elbows and going to the sky on the first kicker.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's going to be, I think some guys are going to be on the top pretty fast from banging, but come from motocross, we're not scared of that. So if we've got to throw a bit of elbow, we've got to throw a bit of elbow.
The pro gate would be doing random draws every single time, and it was a first gate pick at the back of the pack for the reigning champion, Wade Young. He would have to plough the entire pro field to try and remain inside the qualifying spots. No problem for Cox as he stayed on the front row alongside Goodsight and Double T Travis Teasdale. They skied out of the Red Bull Start Arch into the motor logjam, which was one of the key features on the track. Then you went straight out into LMBDA Tire Torture and up and over Sun International Piping Hot. Then the balance beams, the Algoa FM balance beams causing major problems to Cox, and this would send him almost to the entire back of the pack, leaving the rest of the guys out front. Brendan Smith, after making the move from Husqvarna onto Yamaha, was also up into the pro gate and looking to qualify. But Wade Young did what he had to do. he qualified through into the next round from the back of the pack.
Yeah, definitely starting from the back is not easy, but yeah, twice in a row, number 7.
For Brad Cox, it was a tough first ice.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more trip.
Yeah, it was good. I just got knocked out. Unfortunately, made a mistake on the last obstacle. And yeah, it cost me a little bit, but I'm happy. Yeah, I think I made it through to the top 8 or something, so that's cool. First time for me in this. And yeah, it was great fun. I mean, hard work out there, so it's good.
As one by one the pros fell, it started to get real tight at the top, and it was going to be key to start getting those big hole shots. It was the reigning champ from 2018, Blake Goodside, who started to come good as the day got a little bit longer himself. Young and Double T, Travis Teasdale, had started to get themselves into high qualifying spots early on in the heats. But remember, it was getting long in the day, and these guys were getting beaten up out there on the course. Blake had done a good job to start to get himself out front and maybe give himself a little bit of time to eye up some clear passing points. Blake was looking good as he headed inside of a top 8. Wade was going to be there as well, but it was the back of the pack where we focused. The big kid, William Oosthuizen, eased his way through, but it was Cape Town's own Brendan Smith and Port Elizabeth's own Max Jordan who battled for the final qualifying positions to try and remain in the game and go forward into the top 8. Jordan made it through. That meant that big Brendan Smith was out and he wouldn't be playing the game for the rest. But he had a good showing in his first pro outing. Join us after the break as we pick up on the finals. Check this thing out, a brand new feature for ICE 2019. I've dubbed this thing the Widowmaker, and literally I can barely stay on this thing without tumbling down. It's gotta be gnarly, it's gotta be around about 100 meters long, and whoever gets the highest gets the cheese. It's 5,000 Rand to the king of the Widowmaker, and we've got some big hitters here, but can they tame the beast in 2019? And if you let your eyes go up over my shoulder, you check the Widowmaker. What are you thinking about that thing?
Yeah, you know, I don't know, it's quite deceiving. I think in the terms of steepness, it's not too steep, but there's a lot of big bumps and rocks that don't kick you out and battle to just get traction. So I think that'll be the demanding part, and I don't know, we'll see later if we can get to the top.
Riders lined up at the bottom of the hill, getting good traction off the tarmac. It was the big kid on the factory Husqvarna, William Oosthuizen, who locked and loaded, held it wide in third gear, and absolutely dominated the hill climb. The Widowmaker was his from the get-go, and no one could actually believe, including himself, that he was the first to hit the top with relative ease as well. He had one hand on 5,000 Rand, but who else was going to be able to make the gate and get all the way to the top? Brad Cox, even though he'd been knocked out in the qualifying heats, still lined up to try and hold it wide open. Listen to that. Just did not tap off, held his second gear wide, also went all the way to the top of the pile. He would also start to think about some money. He was pumped about that. Now it was a question of if everyone was going to make it up, how do you split 5,000 Rand? Carl Flanagan, wanting a piece of the action as well, held the Yamaha wide open, and it looked like he was going to have a sweet run all the way to the top. Although those little legs kind of paid the price when he actually put his foot down onto nothing at the top. But it was all good for Flanny. Him and the bike had made it up, so he was also clean on the top of the score sheet.
Yeah, you made it, you made it, you made it. That's all.
It was clear that it was going to be too easy, so the run-up was shortened. The first to fail, unfortunately, from Cape Town was Janelle de Villiers. And then one by one, the pros started to falter. Flanny couldn't touch the top. Double T, Travis Teasdale, had to throw it up there. Also came up with a failure. Luke Walker didn't make it. The only man that did was Wade Young.
Yeah, so the hill climb, we had a long run up. There was like 6 or 8 guys got to the top, and then they shortened the run up. I went first and managed to get to the top, so I was super stoked. And yeah, just got a good drive at the bottom and got enough speed going into the hill. So yeah, it was a good feeling to get to the highest point on the hill. Yeah, I think that's my discipline is extreme enduro. So definitely we don't normally get a long run up into any of the steep hills. So yeah, it did help.
With over 50 riders hitting the track multiple times, The track was starting to take a bit of beating, but luckily the crew were on site to hold everything together to make sure we could go into the ice finals in the afternoon. Pole position from yesterday, you're obviously loving the track.
Yeah, no, it's much better than last year. The track's a bit easier this year, but I think I'm too old this year.
Looks like you and Hedgecock at the top, so you guys are going to be banging it early on, hey?
Yeah, I'm going to try to get in front as soon as possible and try to lead the pack from then on.
On the pro gate then, Van Zyl, Iverson and Hedgecock. All the way through the day, it had been Hedgecock coming out with the whole shot. In fact, we dubbed it the Hedgecock whole shot because he was so clean. But it was always coming to the end of the motor logjam where we saw Iverson starting to find his form. In the final, though, it looked like the pressure was starting to get to the big kid. He came out of the logjam in second place and set about trying to chase down on Hedgecock, leaving Van Zyl to pick up the pieces in third place. They cut out a couple of the sections for the juniors, giving them a little bit more fun and flow. Piping hot was not a big issue for them. Algoa FM Gangplank was a section they missed out. And then the UPC truck launch was a big feature. Iverson looked like he was in big trouble as he came towards the end of the loop there. Those slippery logs caught him out and gave a massive lead to Hedgecock. Also Van Zyl looked like he'd been blocked out. Then coming through KTM Boulder Bash, up onto the top step, looked like Hedgecock had a small mistake, but a small mistake and a bad overreaction dropped the wheel off, and he was going to be in trouble. All of a sudden, Iverson was back in the mix. That was Hedgecock in major trouble. He had to go back to the bottom of the KTM Boulder Bash and start that section again. Iverson would have thought he was out of it. All of a sudden, he was in the lead and heading down the hill once again. One more time through the motor logjam, and he was going to be crowned the brand new junior champion of ICE 2019. And Hedgecock knew he had that one in the bag and threw it down the road, but he would hopefully be able to recover for second place. At the same time, though, himself and Van Zyl in the background were having major issues. Iverson didn't dare look over his shoulder, didn't know how close everyone was, but he crossed the line even though it was on the bike and his feet, and Iverson was crowned the new champion. The question was, who would come through with the number 2 spot? Hedgecock was in all kinds of trouble at the Boulder Bash and ended up bashing elbows with Van Zyl as they tried to make it down to see who would pick up the number 2s and 3s. Van Zyl headed down past Piping Hot into the motor logjam first, but a good run through the finish line saw Hedgecock close him down. Van Zyl credited with a number 2 finish, and Hedgecock with the win in one hand threw it away and would actually have to step down into the number 3 finish. Iverson, though, was crowned champion of Junior Ice 2019. Confirmation of Iverson at the top of the pile with Van Zyl and Hedgecock in the 2s and 3s. The rest of the riders, 9 in all, making it through the qualifiers, but the top 3 walking away with the cheese and looking forward to dominating the rest of 3 rounds of ICE in 2019. Barkens Valley was starting to heat up as we headed into the trimbacks. This was going into the top 6 cutback for the support class. Big hitters, Dale Stock, Jean-Andre Radin, Darren Gray, Daniel Stradum, Graham Hedgecock and Etienne Zabrant were all trying to stay in the game and go forward into the 3-man main event. As the day had got longer, Hedgecock had got faster and cleaner. The rest were starting to make mistakes. Zabrant on the Yamaha, coming out of Sun International piping hot, got a little bit loose trying to keep up with Hedgecock and dropped back, but still remained inside of the top 3. Dale Stock, who'd been real quiet the whole way through the day, remained inside the top 3. It looked like he was going to make it all the way to the main event. Remember, he was the reigning champion from 2018. But Hedgecock this year was looking odds on the standout favourite. Jean-Andre Radin had also run good numbers the whole way through and up through KTM Boulder Bash, tried to make a pass on Dale Stock, and the ever calculating and calm Dale Stock allowed him to make the mistake. Quick little look over his shoulder to make sure no one was coming, didn't panic and got back in it. As long as he stayed in a qualifying spot, he was going to be happy enough with that. Daniel Stradum got a bit crossed up and a low line coming in from the KTM Boulder Bash from Darren Gray. Zabrant was having to wait for his turn as it was 5 o'clock traffic with everyone crossed up trying to find that last little bit of traction. All the while out front, it was clear running for Hedgecock. Darren Gray was living on for now. It looked like Zabrant, unfortunately making too many mistakes to stay inside the top 6, was going to be the next rider to be dispatched. Hedgecock had the entire motor logjam finishing straight, clear out, and the last rider coming through was Etienne Zabrant. He was out and would not go forward into the rest of the party. It was starting to get tense. The pro gate had now been trimmed down to the top 4. Flanagan was in the mix there. Wade Young, Luke Walker and Blake Goodsight. In the lineup of the top 4, 2 of them had been previous champions. Flanagan had been the fastest qualifier from the prologue on the previous day. Luke Walker was the unknown quantity. On board with Flanny as he goes over Sun International piping hot to run clean air. Wade Young was desperate to stay inside of a qualifier. Remember, one rider was going to get dispatched and not make the pro main. Only 3 riders would be going forward, and Wade Young definitely wanted to be in the mix. Flanagan, though, looked like he was on point to go ahead and take his first qualifying win of the day's racing. He hadn't seen the checkered flag the whole way through the day, and perhaps one of the riders that had saved the best to last. He seemed to be riding nice and loose with a good flow. Blake Goodsight was right there, and Wade, the man that was getting left at the back of the pack this time, was Luke Walker, who had done an incredible job to survive inside of the top 13 pros to make it all the way through inside of the top 4. Off the fly-off, and then one more small section, the KTM Boulder Bash, that had seen some big hitters go down throughout the day's racing. There was a good pro line there. As long as you carried good speed from the bottom, you could take it all the way up and over. Wade Young was one of the fastest riders on the descent section, but through the motor logjam, all 4 riders in view. Blake Goodsight starting to line up some good lines, maybe holding something back for the final, but Flanny took the win. Goodsight was there, and Young, the last pro to be dispatched, was Walker.
Yeah, well, it took me the whole day to finally win one of the finals, and probably better to do it right at the end, get the confidence up for the last races, and yeah, just working on the starts a little bit, and it's tricky coming up the hill, a bit nerve-wracking with all the riders, but happy to have kept it smooth in this last race, and yeah, 3 of us left now, anything can happen, and looking forward to the last race.
The support top 3 had come down to Raiden, Darren Gray and Hedgecock, and once again, as like his son, Graham Hedgecock saw more hole shots than anyone else off the gate, certainly in the afternoon session. Darren Gray had done an incredible job to survive inside of 19 qualifiers to make it all the way through into the main event. No matter what, it was going to be a top 3 for D. Gray, who at this event had become the People's Champion. He came up and over Sun International piping hot with Hedgecock right on his heels, and Hedgecock looked like he was going to be able to try and make a pass early on. It was going to be up and over the balance beams from Algoa FM. Very tricky section. Raiden was in major trouble, still stuck in the motor logjam, hence its name. And the riders by this stage had come through something like 9 or 10 qualifying heats to stay up and inside of the gate. The main event, though, was going to be a tricky one. All arms, legs, bodies and bikes by this stage were absolutely beaten up, but the crowd were cheering them on, trying to see what else they had in the bag. For Graham Hedgecock, it had been an absolutely Cinderella story. After pretty much not racing anything the whole way through the last 6 months, he was looking as the odds-on favourite. It was between Raiden and Darren Gray to see who was going to walk with the 2s and 3s, but Hedgecock one more time up and over into the motor logjam, and he was eyeing up an incredible win. A fantastic display of riding, very calculated. Certainly hole shots had helped him out, but holding his nerve as well had also paid dividends. In the background, D. Gray was starting to eye up and think about a number 2 finish as he dispatched Raiden around about the halfway marker. But a new support champion was Hedgecock, and he was pumped on that one. Eyes up on the shoulder, D. Gray and the KZN crew for the boys there to welcome him with open arms. He'd worked hard for that one. And Raiden getting the number 3 spot, just nothing left in the can at the end of the day.
Yeah, I was one of the first riders to start when we still finished up at the fort, and yeah, it's become a long way, and Mike has gone from strength to strength, and yeah, the track always gets better and better. Hopefully we see some more top guys next year.
In the support class then, after 19 riders lined up, it was Graham Hedgecock beating out Darren Gray and Jean-Andre Raiden. They were the class of the field, making the cut.
Yeah, about to go into the final, yeah, and just coming to look at a few lines that saw other riders taking, and saved quite a bit of time, yeah, it looks like. So yeah, ready to go into the final, look for the last minute lines.
Everyone was keeping a close eye on Blake Goodsight. In 2018, he'd held everything back until the final. And in the final, he pulled the big hole shot to go tearing into the motor logjam in first place, launching his way through there, getting a little bit hung up, but still managed to just claw his way up and over. But he gave an early advantage to Wade Young and Flanagan. Blake Goodsight was now in trouble, and if he had held anything back, it was time to play the cards. out of the logjam, through tire torture, the Algoa FM balance beams. How do they stay on those things? I have no idea. Up and over onto the Triple L monster truck. It was starting to look like Wade Young was stretching his legs. Up and off the Stu Davidson flyover, and around about 2-second gap between himself and Flanagan, and still no move for Blake Goodsight. That was a good line that he'd been eyeing up, but a lot of the pros had used the same one. The flatland section into the drum roll showed that Flanagan was starting to make maybe a little bit of ground, but Wade Young, this was a section of the track where he was almost untouchable. Certainly coming into the KTM Boulder Bash, he was super smooth, and probably the only rider using that sweet spot inside line and still able to carry all that speed up and over onto the plateau. Also, the different thing for the pros, in the final, it was a 2-lapper, meaning that only half the work was done. This was the point where they came off the rocks, turned right, and then they had to do it all over again, going straight into Algoa FM. Off the Stu Davidson flyover, it was clear that Goodsight was getting a little bit frustrated, could not find the gap to make the pass on Flanagan, and all the while, it was Wade Young who was stretching his legs out front, Flanagan doing his best to try and chase down and defend at the same time. Into the KTM Boulder Bash, Wade Young just a little bit slower at the top there, couldn't find all the traction he wanted to, but it was one more run down the hill and then a sneaky look over his shoulder to make sure no one was coming on. Oh, a small mistake into piping hot. Slightly different approach on the way back, and that robbed him of speed. In the background, Blake Goodsight had made the pass on Flanagan and went for a do-or-die move down the right-hand side. Actually made the pass in mid-air, but went down super hard, almost injuring his leg, and Wade Young kept it clean to walk away with another win. That's his 4th win at ice, with a solid number 2 for Flanny and 3rd this time for Goodsight.
I was happy to take the win in the final. It's definitely close racing, and everyone was riding very well, so I'm happy with that, and also take the win on the hill climb. So I know there's another 2 rounds later in the year. I hope I can make it, and it's always a good event and Mike puts on a great show. So hopefully see you guys next year.
Yeah, I must say, you know, I am 60 years old, so maybe I underrate these youngsters, but I looked at that hill when I thought, guys, it's going to be easy. Somebody's going to park their bike halfway up the hill, we're going to give them 5,000 rand. They all went up, 7 of the guys made it. I thought, oh my God. We then went to the base of the hill, thought nobody will make it, and Wade Young just toodles up and puts his bike against the palisade fence. Walks away with 5,000 rand, but that for everybody was a highlight of the day. Last year we had an air show, the year before Brian Kappa, but I think the hill climb is here to stay.
So an amazing 2019 running of ice in the can once again. The cream certainly rose to the top. Blake Goodsight had a couple of moves in his back pocket. He saved them to the final. Unfortunately, he was down in 3rd place, maybe left it a little bit too late. Got himself up into 2nd place and then went for a crazy move down the finish chute, threw his bike down the road, ended up picking himself up for 3rd place. So he's your outgoing champion. It was Wade Young that literally didn't put a foot wrong in the afternoon session, climbs back on top and remains the winningest rider in ice history. The rest of the categories were insane. Iverson coming on strong as the junior. It's probably his last chance at it as well as he moves up into the 125 category for next year. And the support class was insane. It was the comeback of old man Hedgecock, Graham Hedgecock, showing Tristan how it was done. We leave here at Barkins Valley just as the rain comes in. It's been an amazing day's racing, probably the most stacked fields we've seen throughout the tour, but watch out, we've got 2 more rounds remaining in 2019.